A mouse is simply a peripheral tool used to interact with your PC. However, that wasn't always the case. You see, back in the day, back in the ancient times when I was a wee boy, we had things like Commodore 64 and Apple II computers that hooked up to dial-up internet. And these computers actually didn't come with a mouse at all. And so throughout the years, gaming, especially first-person shooters, games like Half-Life, Counter-Strike 1.6, Doom, you could play Doom, by the way, without a mouse for a very long time. In fact, mice didn't become popular until Doom 2. And so what happens is that the mouse starts from a ball to a laser to a ball on top instead of a ball on bottom, and having to clean it constantly. And so we had all these variations of mice that existed, some even with one button. They didn't even have right click. Right click wasn't even a thing that was like big until way later after that, until what we have now, which is modern gaming mice. I mean, we went through the wired mice, and then we went to wireless, and then we went to wireless with no latency, which is kind of crazy. There's wireless mice with less latency than wired mice now, which I think is just insane as a technological advancement. And now we have the subject of the video today. This is the redragon King Pro. Now, this is a review for this mouse. I've owned a plethora of mice in my life, and one thing that I've taken away from it is that the mice really doesn't dictate how you play games, but it definitely makes a difference. You see, I played Counter-Strike at a very high level in 2015, and I did so with the G100, which is a 500 Hz polling rate mouse, and I even did a test video that you can still find on my channel today using a mouse that I got. It was just a regular Logitech mouse for $10 at Walmart, and I used it in a LE game, a Legendary Eagle game, back when Counter-Strike still used that ranking system. And now they use Premier, it's a bit different, but I was in Legendary Eagle using a $10 mouse that I bought from Walmart just as a joke, and I actually did pretty good. I actually fragged out quite a decent amount. So the conclusion that I came to is that the mouse, despite being what should be considered the cheapest peripheral when you compare it to things like headsets, keyboards, and microphones and webcams, turns out these things are getting kind of expensive. So I wanted to look for budget alternatives, and I went through a plethora of mice to get there. And I think this one probably is the best one I've ever used, but I'll get more into it as the video progresses. So the first thing I want to note is that all the footage you're going to see gameplay-wise was recorded in the past week I've been using this mouse. So all the footage you're going to see is with the King Pro from redragon. And I want to go over the box. So it says that it's a 2.4 gigahertz, plus it has Bluetooth. I think that's a pretty standard feature on a lot of mice. It uses the PAW 3395, which is actually a very high-end sensor. It's not the best sensor as far as I'm aware. I think the 3350, which ironically is a lower number, but I actually think it's the best PAW sensor due to accuracy. But the 3395 is actually pretty decent for the price. And I'm going to be honest, if you're a mouse enthusiast, you're not going to be able to tell the damn difference between a 3395 and a 3350. Unless you use it in a laboratory setting, no human input, your brain will not register or process the difference in speed and accuracy. It's just humanly impossible. And people that say that they can do that, they're just liars, okay? They're just actually lying. It has 5 programmable buttons and onboard memory. I think that's pretty interesting. It goes up to 26,000 DPI, and it does come with software. So it's the actual model number is the M916 AK Pro, but on the box it's the King Pro because it's using their mascot, which is this dragon lady, which I think is very nice looking. I don't think it really adds to the mouse. I think you could buy it without it, but I just like the design and the visuals of it. I'm a sucker for things that are very cute and adorable, and I think the character is very adorable. She's very cute, so that's why I bought it. And that pretty much is everything of note on the box. However, there is one more thing I'd like to talk about, and that is on the box, it says it's 49 grams. Now, redragon here is a little bit of a fibber. I maybe could see that one of these units that could be sold maybe was 49, but my particular one I weighed on a scale in the kitchen, a kitchen ounce scale, and it was actually 51. So it was 2 grams off of what they said. Now, again, this is probably the lightest mouse that I've ever owned. I mean, this is genuinely one of the lightest mice that I've ever used. I've used the Viper 3 Ultimate Mini, and it weighed more than this, and that's an insane feat once you realize that the King Pro comes in at a whopping $22. The Viper 3 Mini is the Viper V3 Mini is $100 on Amazon and in most retail stores like Walmart. So this thing is $22. So I want you to keep that in mind for the rest of this review, that this thing is cheaper than like a family bucket of KFC. I just want you to keep that in mind. It is $22. That was with shipping. It was like $20 without the shipping cost. And I got this thing off Amazon, and I had Prime. So it was $22 with Prime, and I think it's like $24 without it. So we could say $25 rounding up, just for the sake of, you know, being consistent with the pricing. So for $25, we have a really good paw sensor. The mouse skates on the bottom of this thing are actually immaculate. And that's one thing that I want to say. This thing glides so smoothly over my mouse pad, it's unbelievable. And the button clicks are actually very satisfying. I thought the side buttons and everything would feel like garbage, but it's actually pretty good. In fact, the mouse wheel is probably one of the smoothest mouse wheels that I've used as well. And I can compare this to my Death Adder V2 Pro wireless. The buttons on this thing are the equivalent, if not better, in my opinion. I think they feel a bit better. They're a bit louder, so if you don't like that it's a bit, you know, maybe you like a mouse that's kind of quiet, you're probably not going to like this because they are quite loud, but they're much more satisfying, and they have way better bounce back than something like the Death Adder V2 Pro, which means that consistently, you know, spraying, I'm a person, when I play games, I typically do a 3 or 4 round burst spray, and this mouse is perfect for that because it has very strong knockback on it, and that's awesome. And another thing I wanted to note is that it's so light, but the plastic doesn't feel cheap. In fact, I bought a Versa Pro MLG edition, which was $80, and the plastic on it felt cheaper than the plastic on this, and it's $25. Like, the plastic feels immaculately well made, and the build quality is better, because my Versa Pro that I got from MSI actually has build quality stability issues. It's not actually flush with the side of the mouse, so the top part, the chassis, is actually sticking over the side, and you actually cut yourself on the sharp plastic because it's not put together correctly. On a mouse that's $60 more expensive, I would expect a lot better. And the same thing for the Death Adder. The plastic, it actually picks up your oils on your hands way faster than this thing. My Death Adder only took a month before it got really grody, and this thing feels brand new in my hand a week later from using it consistently, almost 8 hours a day playing video games. So the plastic is just immaculate, and it comes with a USB-C receiver so that you can set the receiver on your desk. And this is probably one of the best things about the mouse, is getting that wireless, low latency, but making sure that you can put it somewhere close so that there's no interference from your other wireless peripherals, like maybe your keyboard or your headset, or maybe you have a wireless microphone or anything like that. It won't pick up the 2.4 gigahertz signal from those objects, so it'll have consistent output. So the consistency on the output is fantastic. Another thing that having it on your desk allows is that because the receiver is on the desk, it actually unplugs from the receiver and plugs into the mouse, and you can use it as a wired mouse. And one thing I want to note is that it does have onboard memory, but to detect it in the software to change the settings of the mouse, it has to be plugged in wired. That is a very small complaint, and it's something that I can completely overlook for $25. I don't expect a premium experience where this thing will just work wirelessly. But, you know, the fact that it has software that's optional, I think is great, and you're not stuck with the DPI options. Personally, I didn't really use the software all that much. I'm not going to reprogram the side buttons. I just use forward back like a normal person, and then I just bind my key bindings in-game to that. So there's no reason for me to rebind them, but if you want to use something like copy-paste, you can totally do that in the redragon software. There is no RGB on the mouse, and to be honest and frank with you, thank God I hate RGB. I think it unnecessarily drains the battery life on peripherals, and I think it's a needlessly huge waste of money unless you're playing games in pitch black darkness, and then in that case I can kind of understand on a keyboard, but what the hell do you need it on a mouse for? Do you forget where your mouse buttons are? I think that's kind of hard considering your hand is shaped to the fucking mouse. Alright, how are you going to mess up the buttons on a mouse? That's just insane to me. And it's a huge waste of money, and it drains the battery life. So thank God it doesn't have RGB, one of my favorite things about it as well. And also it keeps the price down, which is another great bonus for people wanting to game on a budget. The mouse, historically, has been the cheapest peripheral until recently. And I think that's a big shame because you really shouldn't be paying that much money for a mouse. A mouse is just an input device. It's the same thing with controllers for console. Who in their right mind should pay $120 for a console, Xbox, or PlayStation controller that's like first party? It doesn't make any sense at all to spend that much money for something that's just inputting to the device. The device itself is already $500-$600. Why the hell do you then have to pay another $120 to get a peripheral just to interact with the device? That's a bit silly, don't you think? And I think it's outrageous that we pay that much. So when something this cheap and this good quality shows up and I use it, and I've never used a Redragon product before in my life, but I would absolutely 100% shill for this company because of how good this individual product is. If Redragon's quality is this consistent across the board for how cheap it is, I think Redragon has a case to be made to be one of the best gaming peripheral companies I think I've ever used in my life. And I currently have a keyboard from them on the way, and that review will come out shortly after this one. For those of you wondering, or who care, these are my settings for Counter-Strike and my in-game mouse settings, and I use 1000 DPI on the mouse itself. I was using 1600 on the other mice, but I actually found that on this mice, because it's so light and it weighs so less, that having 1000 actually puts it kind of on par with 1600 on heavier mice. Because again, the feet are fantastic and it's so weightless that it just glides super smooth across my mouse pad. So I don't really need the extra DPI because I can just flick way easier. And I feel like that makes me aim better as well. So I think my aim has drastically improved just by using this mouse. I can't really say anything bad about it. The most inconvenient thing is when you want to change settings, you have to plug it in. But because it comes with a receiver that you set on your desktop, you don't have to reach around and plug it in manually through the back. There's no reason to hate the mouse. It works totally fine and it functions really great. And $25 is just a steal. I think everybody should give a mouse like this a try because it's such a small investment. And you'll be amazed. I have had much more expensive mice. I've used the SteelSeries Aura 3. I've used the Razer Naga. I've used the MSI Forge MLG Edition. I have used pretty much every Razer peripheral. I've used the Logitech G502, G502 Wireless, the G305. And I cannot think of a better mouse than the Redragon King Pro. And it doesn't have to be the King Edition. I think you can actually get the regular mouse without the cosmetic on it for like $4 cheaper, maybe. I think it's like $4 less. So you don't even have to buy the cosmetic. I would 100% recommend buying this mouse solely because it's better than most of the premium products I've used, and it comes in at a fourth of the price. It's not even half, it's a fourth of the price. Most gaming mice average around $100. This thing is $25. You cannot go out to eat at a restaurant for the amount of money you could pay to use this mouse. And I think that's how everything should be. I feel like you shouldn't really realistically pay more than $50 for a keyboard, about $25 for a mouse, and maybe if you have a wireless headset with a good microphone, $100. I feel like that's like the maximum I would spend on peripherals. And it just so happens that Redragon fits in that budget range. I think it's very reasonably priced, and I think it extremely outperforms pretty much every other mouse I've ever used. I cannot recommend it enough. And I'll show you some B-roll of me using it. And you can come to your own conclusions, but I absolutely 100% shill for this company. I hope one day they sponsor me. And once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will be giving away this mouse to someone. Now, not this mouse in particular, the one I'm using, but I'm going to buy a brand new one, leave it unopened, not out of the box. So someone will get a brand new King Pro, not used, from me. When 1,000 subs hits, it'll be a giveaway. For free, anybody who's subbed to my channel, I will throw your name in a randomizer, and whoever gets it, gets it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.